Imagine stepping into a world where opportunities for people like you are scarce, where the doors to success are closed before you even knock. Yet you not only knock, you break them wide open. This is the story of Sidney Poitier, a man who redefined Hollywood and shattered racial barriers with grace, talent, and an unyielding spirit. Born to Bahamian parents and raised in a segregated world, Sidney Poitier didn't just act, he inspired. With every role, he carried the hopes of those who had been overlooked, becoming a symbol of dignity and perseverance. In 1964, he made history as the first black man to win the Academy Award for Best Actor, proving that talent knows no boundaries. But Poitier's impact extended far beyond the silver screen. He was a beacon of courage, paving the way for future generations in film and society. His legacy isn't just about the movies he starred in, it's about the movement he started, one that continues to echo today. On a fateful day in 1927, during a routine trip from the Bahamas to Miami to sell produce, Sidney Poitier's parents experienced an unexpected event, his birth. That moment, though unplanned, granted him U.S. citizenship, a twist of fate that would later shape his extraordinary journey. Sidney's early years were spent in the Bahamas, surrounded by the rhythms of island life and the guidance of a large, loving family. The youngest of 7 children, he grew up with strong Bahamian roots, helping his parents, who were farmers, and embracing a life deeply connected to the land. At age 10, Sidney's world expanded when his family moved to Nassau. The bustling capital introduced him to new opportunities, but also the challenges of a growing, complex city. Little did young Sidney know that this change was the first step on a path that would take him far beyond the islands, a journey that would transform not only his life, but the world around him. At just 15, Sidney Poitier left the familiar shores of the Bahamas for Miami, only to find himself thrust into the harsh realities of a segregated America. The vibrant city was anything but welcoming for a young black boy, and Sidney quickly realized that the promise of opportunity came wrapped in the chains of racial prejudice. Seeking a new beginning, Sidney ventured north to New York City at age 16, a place brimming with possibility, but no less daunting. The glittering skyline masked a world of hardship. With no connections and only a few dollars to his name, he scraped by washing dishes, living day to day in the bustling chaos of the city. But in that struggle, Sidney found resilience. He taught himself to read using newspapers discarded in the kitchens where he worked, determined to equip himself with the tools he needed to rise. New York was unkind, but it was also a forge, and in its relentless fires, Sidney Poitier began to shape the man he would become. Picture this. A young Sidney Poitier, barely surviving in the chaos of New York City, washing dishes in a bustling restaurant. With every plate scrubbed clean, he was building more than just a meager livelihood. He was building a future. Barely literate, Sidney refused to let this limitation define him. In the quiet moments after grueling shifts, he sat down with discarded newspapers, slowly piecing together the meaning of words. Letter by letter, sentence by sentence, he taught himself to read. It was an act of sheer determination, a silent declaration that he would not remain invisible in a world that refused to see him. As his confidence grew, so did his ambition. Sidney began to dream of acting, a calling as distant as the stars. Despite a thick Bahamian accent and little formal education, he boldly stepped into auditions, facing rejection after rejection. But with every setback, he refined his craft and sharpened his resolve. Sidney Poitier's journey from a dishwasher to an icon wasn't just about talent. It was a triumph of willpower and an unwavering belief in the power of self-transformation. At 17, Sidney Poitier made a bold decision. He lied about his age to enlist in the Army during World War II, hoping to find purpose and stability in the uniform. Instead, he found himself assigned not to the battlefields overseas, but to a VA hospital in New York, caring for psychiatric patients, a role as demanding emotionally as it was physically. The work was relentless, and the weight of the patient's struggles soon began to take a toll on the young recruit. Day after day, Sidney found himself confronting not only their pain, but also the growing realization that this was not the life he envisioned. Determined to chart a new course, he devised a desperate escape, feigning mental illness to secure a discharge. It was a risky move, but it marked a turning point. Free from the constraints of military service, Sidney returned to civilian life with a renewed determination. The army had tested his resilience, and though this time there was brief, it left him with a profound understanding of human struggle, one that would later enrich the depth and empathy of his performances on screen. Sidney Poitier's first steps into the world of acting were anything but smooth. Drawn by a burning ambition to perform, he joined the American Negro Theater in New York, a sanctuary for black artists determined to make their voices heard. But Sidney's journey was far from a triumphant entrance. His thick Bahamian accent and inability to sing, a skill often demanded of actors, made his early performances awkward and unconvincing. Audiences weren't moved, and directors took note. He was humiliated but undeterred. Rather than accept failure, Sidney resolved to transform himself. For 6 months, he worked tirelessly. He listened to the radio for hours, mimicking American accents until his own speech carried no trace of his upbringing. He practiced his acting, refining every gesture, every line delivery. And when he returned to the stage, he wasn't just better, he was captivating. This relentless dedication turned Sidney Poitier into a performer audiences couldn't ignore. It wasn't just about overcoming challenges. It was about proving that even the steepest obstacles could be transformed into stepping stones for greatness. Sidney Poitier's film debut wasn't just an entrance, it was a revelation. In No Way Out, 1950, he played a young doctor navigating the harsh realities of racism, a performance so raw and compelling that it immediately set him apart. Critics took notice, and audiences couldn't look away. Sidney Poitier was a name worth remembering. But his true breakthrough came a few years later with Blackboard Jungle, 1955, a film that tackled juvenile delinquency and racial tensions with unflinching honesty. Sidney's portrayal of Gregory Miller, a rebellious yet thoughtful student, brought depth and humanity to a role that could have been just another stereotype. Instead, it became a mirror reflecting the societal struggles of the time. The film sparked conversations and controversy, but more importantly, it solidified Sidney Poitier's place as an actor who didn't just entertain, he enlightened. With Blackboard Jungle, Sidney wasn't just in the movies, he was using them as a platform for change, signaling that Hollywood's doors were finally beginning to creak open to stories that mattered. In 1964, Sidney Poitier stepped onto a stage where no black man had stood before. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences honored him with the Oscar for Best Actor for his role in Lilies of the Field. It was more than an award, it was a seismic shift in Hollywood's history. In the film, Sidney played Homer Smith, an itinerant handyman who helps a group of nuns build a chapel. His performance was a masterclass in subtlety and heart, radiating strength, humor, and humanity. The audience didn't just see an actor. They saw a man who embodied the dreams and struggles of an entire generation. When his name was called, Sidney walked to the podium with characteristic grace, accepting the award with a humility that belied the monumental significance of the moment. For countless viewers around the world, his win was a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of perseverance and talent in the face of prejudice. Sidney Poitier didn't just win an Oscar that night. He opened the door for countless others to follow, proving that excellence knows no color. Sidney Poitier's career wasn't just about acting. It was about creating characters that spoke to the heart of a changing world. In The Defiant Ones, 1958, he played a shackled convict forced to escape alongside a white prisoner. Their journey became a gripping allegory of racial tensions, earning Sidney his first Oscar nomination. Then came To Sir with Love, 1967, where Sidney stepped into the role of a patient yet firm teacher, guiding rebellious students in a gritty London school. His portrayal of compassion and resilience resonated with audiences, cementing him as a symbol of dignity and strength. That same year, he starred in the Heat of the Night, where his iconic line, "They call me Mr. Tibbs," echoed as a declaration of respect and humanity in a world rife with bigotry. And in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, Sidney challenged societal norms as a black man seeking acceptance in an interracial relationship. Each role wasn't just a performance, it was a statement, a push against the boundaries of representation. Sidney Poitier didn't just act, He held up a mirror to society, asking audiences to confront their prejudices and aspire to something greater. At the height of his career, Sidney Poitier was a symbol of progress, but even symbols aren't immune to criticism. As one of the few prominent black actors in Hollywood during the 1960s, Sidney found himself walking a tightrope. His characters were often written to be noble and uncontroversial, avoiding any traits that might make them too complex or threatening to mainstream audiences. This typecasting, while opening doors, also boxed him in. Critics and even some peers began to question whether his roles reflected true progress or simply placated a system resistant to real change. Sidney was aware of these concerns, and ever introspective, he took a step back from the spotlight. During this period of reflection, Sidney questioned his place in Hollywood and the stories he wanted to tell. It wasn't about abandoning his craft, it was about reclaiming it. By stepping away, Sidney Poitier reminded the world that he wasn't just an actor. He was an artist with a vision, determined to ensure his legacy wasn't confined by the limits others tried to impose. Sidney Poitier's creativity didn't stop at acting. It expanded into uncharted territory, showcasing his brilliance in unexpected ways. In the 1960s, he explored the realm of music with Poitier Meets Plato, an album where he recited Plato's philosophical writings. It was a bold, intellectual endeavor, blending art and thought in a way few actors had attempted. But Sidney's ambition didn't end there. He stepped behind the camera, becoming a trailblazing director in a time when opportunities for black filmmakers were scarce. His directorial projects were as diverse as they were impactful. Stir Crazy, 1980, a comedy starring Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder, became a runaway success, proving Sidney's versatility and eye for storytelling. Whether through music or directing, Sidney Poitier showed the world that his talents weren't confined to the silver screen. He was a creator, a thinker, and a visionary, always finding new ways to leave his mark and inspire others to see the limitless possibilities of art. Sidney Poitier wasn't just an actor. He was an advocate for change, using his craft as a powerful tool for civil rights and representation. With each role, he became a voice for the voiceless, a champion for dignity and equality. In A Raisin in the Sun, both on Broadway and in its film adaptation, Sidney portrayed Walter Lee Younger, a man grappling with the weight of systemic oppression and the pursuit of dreams. The story was groundbreaking, bringing the Black American experience to the forefront of mainstream culture with raw honesty and depth. Beyond the screen and stage, Sidney's presence alone was an act of defiance against a system that sought to marginalize people like him. He chose roles that uplifted, challenged stereotypes, and demanded respect. Off-screen, his eloquence and poise in public appearances further solidified his status as a symbol of progress during the civil rights movement. Sidney Poitier didn't just entertain. He educated, inspired, and opened doors, reminding the world that representation isn't just important, it's transformative. As Sidney Poitier's career evolved, he made a bold shift, from being in front of the camera to taking charge behind it. Directing allowed him to tell stories on his own terms, crafting narratives that resonated deeply with audiences. Films like Stir Crazy showcased his knack for comedy, while Buck and the Preacher and Uptown Saturday Night highlighted his commitment to creating dynamic and diverse portrayals of black life. Though his on-screen appearances became less frequent, Sidney's influence never waned. His work as a director broke barriers for future generations of filmmakers, and his presence in Hollywood remained a constant reminder of what true artistry and perseverance could achieve. Sidney Poitier wasn't just content to rest on his laurels. He used his later years to mentor, inspire, and solidify his legacy as a pioneer who forever transformed the landscape of cinema. Even in quieter moments, his impact spoke volumes, proving that true influence isn't measured by quantity, but by the lasting quality of one's contributions. As Sidney Poitier transitioned into the later stages of his career, he chose a path less traveled, stepping behind the camera to direct. This shift wasn't a retreat. It was an expansion of his artistic vision. Films like Stir Crazy became instant hits, blending humor and heart, while A Warm December and Buck and the Preacher allowed Sidney to explore nuanced narratives and celebrate black stories in ways rarely seen before. Though he reduced his acting roles, his presence in the industry remained undeniable. Sidney became a guiding light for aspiring filmmakers and actors, proving that success wasn't just about personal achievements, but about paving the way for others. His influence lingered in every corner of cinema, not just in the roles he played, but in the legacy he built, a legacy of excellence, representation, and boundless possibility. Sidney Poitier's later career wasn't a slowing down. It was a masterful crescendo in a symphony of brilliance. Sidney Poitier's legacy extended far beyond Hollywood. In 1997, he took on a new role, one as impactful as his work on the silver screen, Bahamian ambassador to Japan. Representing his homeland on the global stage, Sidney brought the same dignity and poise that had defined his career. His ambassadorship wasn't just ceremonial. It was a reflection of his deep connection to his Bahamian roots. Sidney understood the importance of heritage and saw his position as a bridge between cultures, fostering understanding and collaboration between nations. This role showcased another dimension of Sidney's extraordinary life. He wasn't just an artist, he was a statesman, a voice of wisdom, and a symbol of what it means to carry one's identity with pride. Through his diplomatic efforts, Sidney Poitier demonstrated that true greatness knows no boundaries, leaving an indelible mark not only in cinema, but on the world itself. Behind the brilliance of Sidney Poitier's public life was a man deeply devoted to his family. His first marriage to Juanita Hardy in 1950 lasted 15 years and blessed them with 4 daughters. Though their union ended, Sidney's commitment to fatherhood never wavered. He nurtured his daughters with love and encouraged them to pursue their dreams, instilling values of perseverance and integrity. In 1976, Sidney found lasting love with Joanna Shimkus, a Canadian actress who became his partner in life and creativity. Together, they had 2 more daughters, creating a blended family filled with warmth and inspiration. Family was Sidney's sanctuary, the foundation upon which he built his extraordinary life. Despite the pressures of fame, he prioritized being present, ensuring that his children grew up with the same sense of purpose and resilience that defined him. Sidney Poitier's greatest role wasn't in a film. It was as a loving husband and father, a legacy that endures in the lives of those he held dearest. Sidney Poitier's influence wasn't confined to the screen. It extended to a legacy of compassion and giving. In 1959, alongside Harry Belafonte and Jackie Robinson, he co-founded the African-American Students Foundation, an initiative that funded scholarships for African students to attend college in the United States. Over 4 years, this program opened doors for hundreds of young minds, shaping a brighter future for communities across the globe. Sidney's philanthropy didn't stop with education. He was a passionate advocate for HIV/AIDS research, supporting organizations like the American Foundation for AIDS Research, AMFAR, and AIDS Project Los Angeles. Through these efforts, he fought not only for scientific advancement, but also to dismantle the stigma surrounding the epidemic. For Sidney, giving back wasn't an obligation, it was a calling. His life was a testament to using one's platform to uplift others, showing that true greatness lies in the difference we make in the lives of those who need it most. Sidney Poitier's homes weren't just residences, they were reflections of a life well lived. His Beverly Hills estate, nestled in one of California's most exclusive neighborhoods, stood as a testament to his remarkable success. The property combined timeless elegance with modern sophistication, featuring lush gardens, serene living spaces, and an air of privacy that mirrored Sidney's dignified persona. In Florida, Sidney owned a beautifully renovated home that exuded charm and tranquility. Though he never made it his permanent residence, the property reflected his refined taste, with its inviting design, serene outdoor spaces, and a sense of quiet luxury. These homes weren't just about material wealth. They symbolized the journey of a man who rose from humble beginnings to become a global icon. For Sidney, they were more than status symbols. They were sanctuaries, embodying the grace and achievement of a life dedicated to breaking barriers and inspiring generations. Sidney Poitier's career was marked by more than just roles. It was crowned with accolades that celebrated his extraordinary contributions to art and society. In 2009, he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the United States' highest civilian honor, from President Barack Obama. It was a recognition of his groundbreaking achievements and his impact as a trailblazer for civil rights and equality. In 1974, another honor crossed borders when Queen Elizabeth II knighted him, bestowing the title of Knight Commander of the Order of the British Empire. It was a rare and prestigious acknowledgement of his cultural influence on a global scale. From Academy Awards to Lifetime Achievement honors, Sidney's recognitions were not just about his talent, but his profound ability to inspire and uplift. Each award was a tribute to a man who didn't just entertain the world. He changed it, proving that greatness is measured not by what you achieve for yourself, but by what you do for others. Sidney Poitier's legacy isn't just etched in Hollywood history. It lives in the hearts of every actor and filmmaker he inspired. He was more than a star. He was a pioneer, breaking barriers so that others could follow in his footsteps. His performances weren't just masterful. They were symbols of dignity, perseverance, and the power of representation. Actors like Denzel Washington, Viola Davis, and countless others have spoken of Sidney as a guiding light, a reminder that artistry and integrity can change the world. His influence extended beyond the screen, shaping conversations about equality and opportunity in ways that continue to resonate. Sidney Poitier's story reminds us of what's possible when talent meets determination. He didn't just act, he shattered ceilings, proving that greatness is not about where you come from but about how far you're willing to go. His legacy is a torch, lighting the path for generations to come. On January 6, 2022, the world bid farewell to Sidney Poitier, who passed away at the age of 94. Though his voice may have gone quiet, his legacy continues to speak volumes. A man who began life in humble circumstances rose to become a global icon, leaving an indelible mark on cinema, culture, and humanity. In his final years, Sidney lived a life of quiet reflection, surrounded by the love of his family and the admiration of countless admirers worldwide. His passing wasn't just the loss of a legend. It was the closing chapter of a story that inspired generations to dream bigger, fight harder, and never give up. Sidney Poitier's life was a masterclass in perseverance and grace, his impact resonating far beyond his time. As the curtain fell on his remarkable journey, it left behind a beacon of hope and a reminder that true greatness lies in the barriers we break, the stories we tell, and the lives we touch.